We got some interesting news happening around the world in UFOs once again. And you know what? This is why we got you here, man. Bringing this really cool story to the public of the Spaced Out Radio listeners.
Yeah, I don't know. It's okay. No, actually, the thing is that right now, what's fun is that we hit kind of another stage where there are multiple threads firing at once, and so there's several different projects going on, even outside of any chance of detection or anything along those lines, or announcement or disclosure from the government entity. Just if you look at like what's going on, in the community and adjacent to the community, it's astounding everything that's going on. And that's actually what I wanted to get to was actually not so much about this movie, although I should mention that this is what it's about. It's about this movie, Terror in the Sky, that was just recently released. But what I wanted to draw attention to was not necessarily the movie, but the discussion that was held by the people who made the movie on UCR the other night, and or the other day. And this discussion, I mean, like, I'm not joking. I'm going to take a recording of this, and I'm going to show this to people in completely different fields as an example of how humans should behave and get along in a group. This was astounding. So let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about. So essentially, it was like, I think like 90 minutes or something like that, or maybe 2 hours. And I would say, 90 minutes of it, especially the first 45, was all them basically like falling on their swords over and over and over and over and over again. It was awesome. It was like it was mundane stuff, like the fact that when they went out to record one of the anomalies that they were seeing visually, they had a magnetometer on the vehicle. They forgot to turn it on. Honestly, that happens. I mean, that's the whole reason why you run into these groups that have these incredibly rigid procedures in every vehicle, on every person, that covers every detail, because when you're doing it normally, little things get dropped, like forgetting to turn on the sensor, right? But the fact that they were able to kind of, they wanted to essentially come clean about all this and really kind of talk about not just the problems that they had, but why they had them. This was more of a human thing, but it actually gets far more interesting. So, for example, there was a part where they were seeing what looked like a triangle shape in the sky above where they were. And they did a bunch of analysis of it, and they decided that it was most likely related to all the lights that they had there doing the filming. That it was somehow related to that. And so they all kind of convinced themselves that was the case, and everyone packed up and went home. Well, Gary Voorhees was staying there with some other people, and they basically, one of them goes outside and it's still there. Well, they were tired, and there's a lot going on, and so a couple of them kind of overreacted a wee bit to it, as probably a lot of us would, and suddenly convinced themselves that possibly there was a mothership over. And let me get to kind of illustrate this. This got to the point where, and I don't want to name names because I love the fact that these guys came so clean, and you guys can watch it yourself, but I will tell the story without name. One of them basically said to the other, "That's it, I'm done. This is over. This is not funny anymore. Bye," sort of thing, right? I mean, like it was like that. It was that traumatic, at least for like a couple, maybe for a couple minutes, right? And so this just shows that it's really, really easy to become enamored and to become wrapped up and become emotional about what you're filming or what you're analyzing, no matter how hard you try, right? But the last one I wanted to touch on, which is the one that I'm just blown away by, and it's all due to this guy on their team named Professor Matthew, and boy, man, his last name is Zig. Oh, sir, I'm just going to call you Matthew S. I'm not even going to try that. That's a wonderful name, but I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. He was insane. He was such a beautiful example of a human, in that he basically described a a problem that they ran into where science moves slower than the movie. And essentially there was a part in the movie where they had some preliminary data, and there were a couple different possibilities for what it might be. Matthew got very excited about one of the possibilities, and he expressed his excitement in the movie. And he was completely wrong to do this. First off, he was wrong in general. Like, what he got excited about ended up not being what was the case. So there's that, and that's just how science works. But by him showing that emotion, by him preemptively making that suggestion that that might be the answer, he really hurts the whole program. And he realizes that better than anyone else, and he deserves tremendous credibility and kudos for how he phrased this, how he explains it, his whole way of showing this in this talk. I really recommend everyone watch it. But what you had was, a couple people working on something that, could have a lot of impact on a lot of us, showing a tremendous amount of transparency and a tremendous amount of honesty about the struggles they had making the film. And I was just, I was blown away. I really was. I was absolutely blown away.
So the documentary you're talking about is from a group called UAPX, which is called A Tear in the Sky. Our good friend, Little Davey Altman, joining up with Carolyn Corey to put this movie out about latest and greatest on the UFO sightings around Catalina Island, where the Tic Tac incidents seem to have taken place back in 2004, where they went back for the event to see if they could get anything else. Did they talk about it being a hot spot, and that's the reason why they went back there? Because a lot of the players in UAPX were former members of the USS Princeton, which was the radar operating ship for the USS Nimitz incident.
Oh, you want to talk about the movie now, huh? All right. Well, yeah, okay. Sorry, I was more excited about the discussion they had about the movie, because I haven't actually seen the whole film yet. But there are some very interesting aspects of the film we can talk about. So, yeah. So, I mean, essentially, Catalina Island has a tremendous history of all sorts of events, and even the locals there have stories, and there are also historical events that have been captured there. Needless to say, it's around the area that the Nimitz event happened. It's also around the area that a lot of other Navy exercises happen. And there have also been some interesting experiments done there where they seem to be able to I can't say that they get any kind of activity reliably, but they certainly are filming some interesting activity. So it's turning into a reliable, interesting place to explore.
Right on, right on. Now, with this film, it's getting a lot of accolades. I believe it's trending number 2 right now on Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, I have every intention of watching it. I just want to make it very clear to everyone that I have not watched it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet either, and I'm very excited to see it. This is one of the ones that I do want to see. And trust me, there's documentaries coming out every year, and I think this one though is a good one. And not just
never going to get any of them to be as honest as these guys were about the process. I mean, this was like inside the actor's studio. This was astounding.
Well, I mean, the big thing that a lot of people need to realize about this is these guys are trying to recreate 2004 and what happened. They may not have the F-18s, they may not have the aircraft carriers, but the main thing is they went out to that same area to try and see if they could catch anything, because they keep hearing it's a hot spot.
Well, and that's what I'll say two things to that point. One is that there was a point, and I never followed up on this, so I never actually got any confirmation of this by anyone involved in UAPX. But there was a point a while ago where I was talking to Michael Hall on Space.radio when he interviewed me once, and he told me that one of the more interesting things that had happened as far as he was concerned was that there seemed to be an occurrence where they were playing a version of Whale Song but sending it out optically. And the result of this was that they believed that they could correlate this with some orbs appearing. And they mentioned nothing about this in the film. I haven't found out anything out about this since then. I don't know if it's something they followed up on after whatever Michael saw. But to me, it's stories like that have really brought everyone's attention back to Catalina Island. It's this belief that there are events happening there regularly enough that you're going to be able to start looking at ways to tease it to happen. You're going to be able to start looking at ways to see patterns, right? And I think that's a lot of the attraction to it. But what really kind of becomes the kind of in many ways a highlight of the film was that they actually filmed something really weird. Honestly, really weird. And I sent you some photos. I don't know how easy it is for you to show them, but essentially what this was a it was an absence of cloud material in the sky at a rather odd place. And after looking at the film again using different filters for different light frequencies, what they were able to determine was that the hole closed up so fast that essentially what Matthew said was that his rough guess was that the clouds up there would have had to have been moving at 700 miles an hour each to then collide and close a gap that fast. Like, it was completely abnormal how fast the gap closed. And they don't know for sure that it is anything at all. It's still very early in the analysis, but it's cool. It's really interesting. And you know, who knows? Maybe they just capture some fantastic weather phenomenon we've never seen before. Who knows? But they provided some good pictures. And what was also interesting about it is that there was these dots that appeared inside the hole, and they did a beautiful job of explaining this. What they did is they used machine learning to look at the statistical likelihood of pixels appearing. I'll cover this when we get back. It's very interesting. Yep.
Let's cover when we get back. The Unbiased UFO Report with the fedora wearing Jon Hudson continues on Spaced Out Radio. When we return on the Mighty SOR for the final half hour, Shirky Poo's news is coming up as well. Stay tuned. All right, we're clear.
Did you see the pictures?
I'm about to bring them up.
They're actually kind of neat. I gotta say.
Remember though, dude, that our radio audience can't see pictures.
Well, yeah, no, that's why I was trying to describe it. So I mean, that's why I was trying to describe it. Well, because even if you planned on showing it to the YouTube crowd, you hadn't yet. So I was still describing it. But yeah, no, I mean, it's actually, it's cool. It's really interesting.
Cool.
But yeah, man. That. I'm totally not kidding. I'm going to use that in training in the future. I'm going to take clips of that and I'm going to use that in training. You have no idea how many teams could have been saved if you had people in them behaving that way.
What are you talking about?
The way that they were behaving, the way that they were behaving in this interview, the way they were copping to their mistakes, and the way they were being so honest about it, and the way they were learning from those mistakes, the way they were focusing on the learning, the way they went about it was so. Honestly, it was completely abnormal, and it was absolutely wonderful.
You get enamored by the strangest things, man.
It's all about frequency and statistical likelihood, Dave. That's something that I've never seen in my life. So that's why I like baseball, because baseball is
Love
all
it.
about statistical anomalies.
By the way, did you see what happened in Toronto last night?
No.
Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees hits this long bomb second decker into the left field, over the left field wall. Dude from the Toronto Blue Jays catches the ball. It falls down. He picks it up, turns, and there's a young 9-year-old kid right there in a Yankees jersey, Yankees Aaron Judge jersey. He turns, he gives the ball to the kid. The kid gives him this giant bear hug and starts crying on his shoulder because his hero just hit this home run. Honestly, it is so beautiful. It's all over MLB.com. And so after the game, they showed Aaron Judge the footage. And today's game, they actually brought the kid and his dad back along with the guy who caught the baseball, and they got to take in batting practice at field level. And then they got to meet Aaron Judge, and this kid is bawling his eyes out. He's so happy to meet his hero, and you know what? It's just, I looked at that whole scenario today, and I'm a diehard sports fan, as you know. And I just looked at it, man, and I'm like, that moment, that's baseball.
Oh yeah. Oh,
that's
God,
baseball.
yeah. That is baseball. That is baseball. That is baseball. Yep. No. And the thing is that, I've seen, I mean, not quite that cool, but I've seen some similar sort of events that happen at at Sharks games, and it's different. Like there's a different, like hockey has different kind of culture to it, and they each have their different kind of slants to it, and yeah, that is. Have you ever been on a major league field before?
Yes.
I got a chance twice to go to batting at San Francisco, and like they did like an event for us where we got that, and I could not believe the distances you had to throw. I mean, you hear about it all the time when you're watching baseball games, but once you're actually on the field and you get out there, and you get out there to the out, and you look how far away home is, you want to call an Uber. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Dude, as much as I am a hockey guy, if God said to me, I'll give you one day, you can either play Major League Baseball for one game or play the NHL for one game. I know for a fact 99 times out of 100, as much as I'm a hockey guy, I would choose the baseball game. I love baseball. Love baseball. We got 20 seconds here. Big thank you to Obi Flett, Smithy, Mr. Cowley, TMI, Horror Realm, and Cat Chaser for the awesome super chats. And yeah, if you go to sportsnet.ca, they have the entire reel on what happened with that young kid. Here we go, everyone. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate you tuning us on the Mighty SOR. I want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with the Unbiased UFO Report. The fedora-wearing Jon Hudson is back again, and we were talking about this new documentary that has just come out called The Terror to Sky. Jon, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, this is once again, I haven't seen it, but I recommend everyone does. And most of what we're talking about is essentially the wonderful conversation that was had about the mistakes that were made, as well as some of the highlights of the film that have been released with the release of the film that give us all a chance to kind of talk about it. And essentially what the focus very much of much of this discussion was that there was an anomaly filmed by them, an anomaly in the sky, where essentially an opening appeared in the clouds, and it was kind of a circular opening. Within the opening, some white dots appeared, and they appeared to increase, and then at some point the hole closed up. And there's a couple interesting things that have been kind of called out about it. So first off, it turns out there was radioactive data gathered that correlated with this event. There was actually a radioactive data burst that was clearly what caused what, who knows, but clearly some relationship. So there appears to be a burst of energy that is in relation with this, which actually makes sense. The cloud, when seen using different light frequencies, they realized that the cloud hole closed up very, very quickly. But what I wanted to get to was that these weird dots that appeared inside of the hole, they were able to do some machine learning analysis to say, okay, given within a frame of the picture, given that we know that these pixels appear in this form, you give it a lot of examples, and it can start kind of guessing incredibly well as to what comes next. And so essentially what they were able to determine was that, at least from a mathematical statistically point of view, the likelihood of these dots appearing where they did in the picture, and the number of them they did, and the way that they grew to a size and didn't grow. There were some great details that went over that I'm not covering here. But the point is that between the fact that, one, there was just a weird anomaly filmed, two, that it was caught in multiple frequencies that shows some differences. They caught it closing at very, very high speeds, that there was a radioactive burst that seems to correlate with it. And the fact that these dots inside appear to have some statistical significance as to how they formed, how long they stayed, and where they appeared in the thing. So all of this kind of comes together to say that this was actually a bona fide, like, WTF, right? Like, this is like a real, like, what the hell is that? And that's awesome. Like, that's what you want in science. That's some of the most fun things to go after. And so this is the chance to let the science run and see where we go. But it's super, super, super interesting.
John, there's a lot of documentaries out there right now that are on disclosure about UFOs, about everything that's going on. What makes this one, from what you're hearing, that much different?
Well, I think a lot of people would argue that it is I think a lot of people would argue that what makes this one different is the people who are a part of it, because you have people who were either a part of the Nimitz event in some way, shape, or form, or very auxiliary to the event in some way, shape, or form, and they're in their kind of home backyard, and there's kind of a home court advantage hinting to it, and sort of thing. So I think that there are some people that kind of favored this one because of the fact that it was the UAPX is for a lot of people is kind of seen as kind of somewhat of a homegrown organization out of this community, and so I think that we all kind of wanted to see them do well, and so I think that the part of that is very honest. I think that the other thing that makes this different is that they they do seem to have this this interesting data that they're planning on sharing, and they do plan on sharing the data, which they did talk about, which I love. But for me, what really makes this stand out, because to me, I'll be honest, like I like a couple of people working on it, I don't know well, but I know a little bit, just talking to on social media and so forth. and I like them. I think they're nice people, and so I would probably see it for that reason. But if I didn't know them, I don't know if I would necessarily weigh this higher than any other until I saw this interview the other day where they all talked about the mistakes they made. And this made it so clear to me that there was a serious effort to stay as close to the science as possible without making it so boring that you walked out. And they really danced with that yin yang, and they danced with it very elegantly. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the result is.
All right, let's move on to another topic that we have here tonight. What can UFO Twitter learn from Ashoka?
Yes.
What is this about?
So the problem that I see in the community is that, everyone is very Boolean and basically falls on black and white sides and feels that they have to take these opposing views. Now, I don't know how many of you have much knowledge about Star Wars lore, and seeing it out as it is, May the 4th. I thought it might be appropriate to talk about the fact that there is not just the dark side and the light side. There are also what are called gray Jedi. And what gray Jedi do is they recognize that there's value and there's truth in both. And there's value and truth in both people that practice. And that you can't take this very Boolean, this very extreme attitude of, this is good and this is bad, this is evil and this is good, this is this and this and that, that you really have to, look at the world more honestly, which is in lots of beautiful shades of gray. And essentially that is, and it's very funny because, I think a lot of people would argue that the only reason why she went that route was because of her unique position, because she was Padawan to Anakin, and so for Anakin becoming Vader was just very traumatic experience for her. And so a lot of people will argue that's the reason, but the real reason, what's starting to evolve, is that it is the gray Jedi that actually understand the reality of the universe. And I believe with every fiber of my being that we're seeing the exact same thing happening in the UFO Twitter and the whole community. Everyone wants to be on this side or that side, and no one wants to be on both sides. And I think it's until we get there, it's all going to be all tit for tat and this for that and this, all the stuff. And some people enjoy the parade of it, and that's fine if you get a kick out of it. But in the end of it, it's the middle way is always the way.
Well, UFO Twitter has been a cesspool of information for a long time, of greed, of backstabbing, of online fighting, immaturity at its best. It really has, where you've seen heavyweights in this field like Tim McMillan and John Greenwald from the Black Vault go head to head, or Stephen Greenstreet or Cal Korff or Mick West go after Lou Elizondo, Sean Cahill, and many others. I mean, it has been a cesspool of scum for a long time. At first, it was about passing a lot of good information and new information that was coming out. Usually it was surrounding the To the Stars Academy, but since that, dropped quicker than a stick of dynamite, I mean, it's become a cesspool, John.
Dave, I could not have possibly set up, written, or even hired a writer to create a better example of exactly what I'm talking about. You just picked a side. You just decided you are going to be evil or good.
No, I did not.
Now, yes, you did, because of the fact that all you did was you took there's a buffet of data available about Twitter, and you picked the data sets that you had available to you that cater to your narrative, which is that Twitter is useless. it's cesspool, it's horrible,
No,
it's nasty, it's evil, it's
no,
all these
I don't.
horrible
I don't
things.
know what planet you're
The
on
sky's
right
falling.
now.
But no, but when you describe it, you've always described it as this cesspool, as this very,
It is.
it's very negative, right? And there are other people that describe it as this, very beautiful place, and that's not realistic either. The realistic view of it is that it's not always ugly. It's often beautiful. It's not always horrible. It's often lovely. It actually has
Okay.
incredible examples of kindness and sharing, and it has incredible examples of honesty and empathy and all sorts of other things. And so to view it as a very negative thing, I think takes the same kind of extreme one side or other side position that isn't the kind of middle way that I'm talking about.
Well, let's see, John. Our show has been attacked a number of times on Twitter for posting logical questions to illogical people. Our show has been, has been shared. Give you an example. Our Lou Elizondo's show was shared numerous times. People enjoyed it. Okay. Where I'm saying it's a cesspool of information is when you're a keyboard warrior, like most people are on Twitter, it dilutes the information that is out there. Look, I'm a fan of Twitter. Okay. I'm a fan of it. But when UFO Twitter started, it was you either loved the TTSA or you were wrong. Okay, that's the way it started. So anybody who had a differing opinion or wanted to ask questions, some of them may be tough, because we weren't kissing Tom DeLonge's ass on it, we were considered, ungrateful and anti-UFO and anti-ufology and old school, boomer, UFO boomer, if you remember that term. Okay, and it was garbage. It was garbage. And now you look at it, when I go on there, and I go on UFO Twitter every day, my opinion that you are calling that is very biased is actually quite unbiased, considering that when I'm looking at it is very, no, don't give me one of those yet.
No, I don't say bias.
Okay.
I'm just saying picking one
No,
side or the other and not picking the middle ground.
I'm not picking sides. My job as a journalist is to pick the middle ground and to tell the audience what I feel is the strong opinion of what I feel on that. And there is, outside of the 20% of the high quality information that is actually on there, the rest of it is just bickering, arguing, and insulting. And for a lot of people, and I know I'm in some private groups where this is discussed, they are no longer talking on UFO Twitter and passing information on UFO Twitter because of the horrendous way people are treating each other, and they would sooner shoot before asking questions later. It's much like Texas out there.
That's not my experience. And the thing is that even if it's only that 20% that you say it is, I think it's bigger than that. But even if that's only 20%, it wouldn't it be a more fair way to report it to then report both the good and the bad? We
do. That's why we have the Unbiased UFO Report.
Well, I know, but all I was saying is that what you were just saying about Twitter, that was all negative. That was all negative stuff. And so that to me seemed very kind of anti.
Yeah, but John, that's what the news is. That's what the news coming out of Twitter is on UFOs. You telling me Stephen Greenstreet, as a so-called journalist, is calling things down the middle? Are you telling me that Cal Korff, a so-called journalist, is calling things down the middle? Mick West, as a skeptic, calling things down the middle?
No, why would you think? Why?
Well, I'm giving you examples of what kind of a cesspool of information that it has. What about all the people out there who have 4 or 5, maybe 10, 15 aliases that go around bullying people on there if you don't share their love for Tom DeLonge?
I don't see any of that, Dave.
Then I don't know what you're looking at, because everybody else in the world who is on UFO Twitter is looking at that, and we're seeing it, and they're pulling it away. There's a reason why Ross Coulthart, award-winning investigative journalist, is not publishing stuff on there. There's a reason why George Knapp has pulled away from it. Okay, there's a reason.
There's a lot of people that misuse it, for sure. I mean, a lot of people think Twitter's should be used for things like convincing people of things. It's like, no, Twitter is for disseminating information, occasionally asking questions, but for the most part, it's just for disseminating information. You're not going to be convincing anyone of anything on there. And so if you use it for that, it can get very frustrating. And the thing is that I'm not saying that your experience is by any means abnormal. And I'm not even saying that necessarily my experience is normal. But what I'm saying is that if I can be having my experience and you're having your experience and there are others, then it seems, and the thing is that you're right, from a news point of view, it makes much more sense to report that. But the thing was, it was just a really cool opportunity to kind of give an example of, yes, you talking about that as a news item, that makes perfect sense. But for someone to then take that same position and do that same sort of I don't want to use a rant, but like same sort of dialogue on Twitter, that would basically that would be like throwing gasoline onto the fire. Like it wouldn't do any good. It wouldn't be helpful.
Well, we're going to agree to disagree on UFO Twitter, my friend. We're going to agree.
Totally. No, absolutely. And the thing is, I mean, it really makes me wonder, like, why do people go on it if they don't like it? I mean,
because you have to. That's my job as a journalist. I have to go on there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right? I have no choice. I have to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I guess what I'm saying, John, is 4 or 5 years ago, I could go on UFO Twitter and pull off 5-7 stories a day of UFO news. I can go on Twitter today, on UFO Twitter today, and I'm lucky to find one. And it's not because it's a slow newsreel. It's because that it's become a battleground for fake people hiding behind fake profiles to literally verbally insult each other.
Like it's almost like we're using two different Twitters. Like I've had the exact opposite experience. Like I've been amazed lately how easy it's been for me to find articles. But the thing is that I have specific sources I use, right? I have specific people that I go to for news items. So I probably work with a more curated list of people. I mean, you know, I don't talk to people who aren't like adults. Okay. And so maybe I just end up with a crowd of more friendly folks around. I don't know, man. All I know is that for me, the internet has never been as volatile as it was in 1996. And it's been getting slowly better and better and better ever since then. And, you know, yeah.
I don't even have time for news anymore.
You need an aggregation tool.
Well, you know what? It's an interesting battle. And take it or leave it. I will leave UFO Twitter to those who are out there. Leave the cesspool to those who are out there. It's what it is. Cesspool.
It's where all the good jazz is.